You're traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century and challenging the status quo. You are now entering the paradigm shift.
Well, welcome to the paradigm shift for this July 2nd, 2018. And today's a big day. We have a couple debut shows. One is a metamorphosis. I was thinking about this before the show. I think that probably two of us in this room today were kind of hoping that today would come at some point to metamorphose what would be coming on at 10 a.m. into what is coming on at 10 a.m. Suzanne, am I kind of correct in assuming that? I am assuming a little bit there. I think we both were hoping that, well, and I'm not going to give it away, but I just wanted to.
We can announce it. Why don't we go ahead?
Okay, that's fine. Well, I'll let you do it because it's your show kind of on steroids now.
Well, I don't really know. I think what I might do is continue the Wasatch Report maybe in podcast format or when you and I have some extra time because we have so little else to do, right? But our very wonderful friend, Mark Kreslins, he was on with us last week. He's been working feverishly in an attempt to change the way of thinking with regards to human abortion and state sovereignty, limited government. And he is picking up his headset. He will be joining me for the debut edition of the Mark and Suzanne Show, Revolutionizing Radio.
So we have a brand new show at 10 a.m. And just truth be known, the second new show is scheduled to start at 11 because of the fact that I must end producing one show and then begin producing the second show. And if we were in a regular studio, I would just push a button and a whole bunch of ads would play for a few minutes, and then I would queue up the next show. Unfortunately, we don't have ads. I'm not in a fancy studio, so there will be a little intermission. You will get a little replay. Well, it'll be actually Mike Meharry will actually pick up at the top of the hour and 11 for a few 2 or 3 minutes. So when you're listening at 10 and it comes to 11 and you're expecting the second new show to come on, there will be about a 2 to 3 minute delay while I reset because I have to get it so it records it so I can put it on playback and so I have it archived. We can put it on SoundCloud. If I don't set this all up, then it just doesn't make it to all those other things. So you can listen to it at your leisure. So there will be probably about a 2-3 minute space in there at the beginning of the top of the hour at 11 o'clock before the new show that Suzanne also is hosting again. And I don't know if you want to just give a quick, shout out to that new show and tell people what to expect as well.
Sure. With the coming retirement of Justice Kennedy, I have been watching everybody just jumping around with bated breath, waiting to see who our next politically connected lawyer in a black robe is going to be. And I thought, we always look to the Supreme Court to see what the determinative outcome is of any major issue that we have across this continental landmass. And I thought, why don't we talk about this court and the decisions that people refer to so frequently when we say this is the law of the land, because the Supreme Court said so. So what I decided to do was pick landmark cases, examine the historical context in which they fomented and were ultimately decided and how they affect us today. So I'm calling the show Case in Point, and we're going to open up with the case of all cases, Marbury versus Madison, with the expert of all experts, Kevin Gutzman, will be joining me today. So this is really exciting.
Well, I actually am very much looking forward to it as well. So we have a really jam-packed day. Now, I don't know if you're welcome to chime in at any time on this, Suzanne, because I'm going to talk about the Constitution again as usual. But
I'm listening. I'm just shuffling paper, so I will mute my mic
Now, you
until
can
I
hit
hear
your
my-
mic, and if you want to jump in, I see when you unmute, and you're welcome to chime in.
Perfect.
Because of my schedule, I'm 100% sure. I mean, there's absolutely zero chance that I'll be having a show on Wednesday morning because of work. I will be working. So I'm going to quickly touch on the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going to get into it a little bit as I discuss the Constitution. Actually, the debates on the Constitution. But I just wanted to quickly acknowledge that we are coming up on the 4th of July when we celebrate the Declaration of Independence signing. Now, in reality, if I'm not mistaken, it actually was ratified on the 2nd. So today is actually Independence Day. But the big signing, the big celebration revolves around the 4th when it was pretty much given to the people. So today I'm going to celebrate Independence Day today. And I'm going to bring it into our discussion. And of course, who would I be reading when I'm talking about ratification debates? Well, of course, I have a Patrick Henry speech from the Virginia Convention debating the new Constitution. I'm not going to get very far into this because I want to discuss something that's been going. It's kind of been going, and Suzanne, you'll right away recognize why I'm making this discussion. Over the last few weeks, Suzanne and I have been embroiled in these conversations about the Constitution and let's just be honest about it. The worship of the Constitution, the deification, the making it divine. Mark Kreslins has also been dealing with this for forever too. Like us, we have been forever dealing with people that just the Constitution can do no wrong. So I'm going to get into the ratification debate, Patrick Henry's speech, which is going to take me over to the Declaration because I'm only going to get very, very short, a couple sentences into this, and we're going to go off on something else because of something that Patrick Henry says at the very beginning. So this is from June 7th, 1788, that this speech by the great orator, Patrick Henry, at their ratification convention. So he starts off, I have thought and still think that a full investigation of the actual situation of America ought to precede any discussion of this great and important question. That government is no more than a choice among evils. Boy, what a statement. Now, this is 1788. I can only, this is only suspicion because he didn't add reference to where that statement came from. But you have to really believe that he read Thomas Paine's Common Sense, and specifically of the origin and design of government in general, with concise remarks on the English Constitution. So this is the common sense that there's just no way that you can't believe that he's not making reference to that when he says that government is the choice among evils. So here it is. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer, we are exposed to the same misery by a government, which we might expect in a country without government. So, we get misery by government like we would expect with countries that live in anarchy without government. Our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Boy, did Thomas Paine just say, did he just sum up where we live today? we provide the means by which we suffer. Now, this is where I wanted to take us back to the Declaration of Independence. Because we provide the means. Let me just read. I'm going to go to the second paragraph of the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So, it's by our consent that we live under this misery today. Man, when I was sitting there thinking about this as I was preparing for the show, I was like, holy cow. I never thought about it that way. So it's by our consent that we live under tyranny, that we live under this system of government that, takes our liberty away from us, that constantly is looking for new ways to separate us from our wealth, looking for new ways to take and minimize our liberty, to centralize power further in Washington, D.C. It's by our consent. I mean, if Mark Kreslins was in here with us this morning, he could attest to the fact that Dan Fisher, who was looking to increase liberty and reduce government, only garnered 7% of the vote. 36,000 people voted for him. Everyone else that voted. The other 93% voted their consent to living under tyranny. Think about that. Let that sink in for just a minute. As we sit here and we're thinking about on the July 4th, where we're celebrating the Declaration of Independence, where our forefathers, seceded from, at that time, the greatest empire on this planet. They cut the ties. They separated. And, as you go down in the Declaration of Independence, you'll see where he talks about giving the reasons why you are separating, so that the world understands that you're right, the rightness, the just reasoning behind your separation. Mark and I have talked a lot of times that, quite honestly, there really is no fix for Washington, D.C. And Suzanne would, I think, would agree in our conversations that as we have discussed the Constitution, and Suzanne and I discussed before that, I'll just speak for myself, that I believe the Constitution was deeply flawed. And there's no way for me to prove this, but I can't help but believe that the nationalists, that would be Hamilton and Madison, who desired a strong national government with vetoes of a veto power over the states, which was at the Philadelphia Convention, every time they brought up that very system, it was voted down. It was not even a close vote. It was just absolutely voted down. But when you look at where we're at today, and I'm about a sentence into Patrick Henry's opposition to this Constitution that was ratified, where he is talking about that government is a choice among evils. Thomas Paine saying that we're furnishing government with the tools to tyrannize us, to cause the evil that we live under. Jefferson listed out the reasons why we were separating from Great Britain in the Declaration of Independence. And at this time, at this time of the year, we really ought to sit down and read the Declaration. And I should sit here and read it to you in full, but I don't want to take the entire show reading the entire Declaration of Independence, because honestly, you should have a copy and you should read it, because the only way we are truly going to fix the tyranny we live under is if we withdraw our consent. Because that's what Thomas Paine was saying, that it's we furnish what is necessary for government to do the evil to us. And what are we furnishing? Consent. You know what secession is? Simply, I mean, when it really comes down to it, it's withdrawing your consent. So you could have, we talk about it all the time. So you say, well, I can't secede from the United States government. And for the most part, that is probably correct. But if we learn nothing from the left coast, they're actually leading the way in trying to leave the Union. It's amazing. The leftists, the Marxists in California are showing you these so-called conservatives, the ones that supposedly revere the Declaration of Independence, supposedly worship the Constitution, how to deal with tyranny. But let's get back to solutions. On the small scale, on the personal scale of secession, and I know Suzanne's already there. I know my brother's already there. I know Daniel's already there. You can do your own personal secession in homeschooling your children, getting them out of those public indoctrination camps. Because be honest with yourself, that isn't exactly what they are. They do not teach, they indoctrinate. They make good little statists, good Marxists. One example, look at the Parkland people that are going all over the place on the Marxist dime, trying to take away liberty. Where did they learn all that stuff? They learned it in school. Look at these college campuses around the United States. They have these so tolerant liberals, so tolerant Marxists that attempt to quell any voice other than their own. Try to have a so-called conservative come and speak at that university. Watch the outrage, the protests, the violence. Look at Portland, where Donald Trump supporters. Well, you know, I truth be told, I voted for Donald Trump because he made promises that I hoped he would keep, and he did not. He was a very good politician. He learned very quickly how to get votes and to skate away on not doing what he said he'd do on the campaign trail. Excuse me, had a cough. But you have Trump supporters out there that are having a rally, peaceful rally, looking for no trouble. And you have the left come there, Antifa, and cause violence in the streets. Where are they learning this stuff? The public schools, the universities. That's where these people are coming from. They're learning how to be good Marxists. So as there's a simple suggestion on how to withdraw your consent. Withdraw your consent from having your children brainwashed. Because that's what this indoctrination is. It's brainwashing them. To ignore the family values, the Christian morals that your family is trying to instill in them. Saw an article the other day talking about, and I don't know that it was a new article. It might just be a rehash. Stuff comes up all the time on Facebook that's old. But there was a discussion in that article about a school district was not allowing parents to see the LGBT curriculum that they were pushing on these children in the public school system. Oh, that's freedom, isn't it? That's liberty. That's giving you parental choice as far as what the crap that they're shoving into your child's mind at school. So we talk about some personal secession, and that's one way that you can secede, withdraw your consent. But on the larger scale, we need to start educating people about this simple document that every July 4th they get hot dogs and hamburgers, get a couple of cases of beer and have a big party, but never once pull out the Declaration and actually read it at these parties. If you're out there and you're gonna have a 4th of July party, I challenge you today to pull out your copy and read it in full at the party. I'm betting most of the people get tired. They'll go looking for another beer or go get a hamburger off the grill or go find some place to sit and talk to their buddy while you're reading it, because who cares about that old musty thing? It's a day off. I got a day off of work. It's time to party. It's time to go out and boat. I challenge you to read your copy of the Declaration of Independence at your party today. Why? Because it's important. The principles that Jefferson is espousing here, the idea of natural rights. We're endowed with unalienable rights. Here, let's just go off on a slight tangent here. What's the first one? Life. Yet here we are, 60 million dead babies later. The establishment pro-life candidates win in Oklahoma. The abolitionist, the federalist, the one that would stand up to the general government, gets 7% of the vote, 36,000 votes. And again, as I talked about last show, it's disappointing. But really, think about this. Be honest. A couple of years ago, 4 or 5, 6, 7 years ago, would he even got 36,000 votes? People are opening their eyes, and it's important. When Dan Fisher was important because 36,000 people in Oklahoma opened their eyes and changed their way of thinking. And Dan was instrumental in that. He was instrumental in changing the minds of thousands of people all around the United States that started seeing his campaign and started looking and started asking questions. For those of you in Dan's neck of the woods or Dan's campaign or other states who were trying to emulate Dan's campaign, read the Declaration of Independence. It's time for you to understand that government derives its just power from the consent of the governed. I know Mark Kresna talks about that all the time. We need to start getting back to where we dictate what government does. Stop furnishing them what they need to do evil to us. I'm not quite sure how we do that on the federal level. I think we have to start locally, and I think we have to start putting our foot down in our local governments, our county governments, our city governments, our village governments, whatever you have, and then demanding that they secure your liberties and that your county sheriff secures your liberties from the overreach of the federal officers that come and eat out your substance. I'm going to give me just about 2 seconds to find that line in the Declaration of Independence. Let's see here. Oh, of course, it's going to be very difficult to find. Oh. All right. Oh, here it is. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Does that not describe our masters in the federal government? They have swarms. They have legions of bureaucrats that their only goal is to eat out our substance. And truth be told, let's just be honest about this. Our state governments do the exact same thing. So when I say we need to have our local governments start, especially our elected sheriff, who I discussed on one of them that the policing power is a municipal power, that it's a local power, and that in the Constitution, there's no delegated authority for the general government to have police forces, FBIs, BTAF, Bureau of Land Management, and their black-booted thugs that go out and try to kick ranchers off of land. That doesn't rightfully belong to the federal government. If it was anyone's, it would be the states. Yet, we have all these thousands of officers that are sent out to steal from the citizens. Does anyone even care anymore? Does anyone even care what Jefferson said? Has anyone even read the reasons why we seceded from Great Britain? If you go down through them, they are pretty much everything that this government does today. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. Do you actually consent to the theft that they do? How is taxation with representation working out for you? I mean, really, think about this. They're taking, between everyone, they're taking at least half of your money. And they're taking it in ways you can't even see. You go to the gas pump and everyone screams about the gas companies making ungodly profits when they're making a few cents on every gallon. And government's making almost half of it, probably, on taxes you never see. And one time here in Pennsylvania, our gasoline prices were lower than New York's by a substantial amount. What did Pennsylvania do? They raised taxes on it. Now, I can save almost 50 cents a gallon going to New York to buy gasoline. Where do you think I buy my gasoline? I don't give that money to Pennsylvania. I'm not going to give them money to do evil to me. Anyone that lives on the border in Pennsylvania that doesn't go to Maryland or West Virginia or New York or New Jersey to buy their gas, they're out of their minds. Stop. If you live there, stop furnishing the money to this government in Harrisburg that they're using to do evil to you. Withdraw your consent. There's another way you can affect government and its abuse of your liberties by withdrawing consent. I withdraw my consent. I am not going to give them the money to harass me. Let's see here. Oh. Well, we have standing armies. We're going to have those. Oh, and they have. Oh, here's a good one. Think about this one. I had no intention of going into the Declaration this much, but think about this one. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for their tenure of their office and the amount of the payment of their salaries. People say, well, go to the federal court. Who do you think the federal judges are going to render verdicts for in favor of? You think it's going to be your liberty? Are you that naive? Are they going to go against the person that putting them there, the government that's putting them there and paying their salary? they're not independent. They're not angels that can look at everything with a blind eye as they are and render an honest opinion. Their opinion is always jaded by what's best for the federal government. Read those. I mean, he talks about standing armies, which when our founders feared very, very much. And we have standing armies today. Let's see. I'm not going to go through them. For the fact of the matter is, we have allowed government to do what the king did. And today, we just go along our merry way and don't do anything about it. It's time for us to read the Declaration and start thinking about our own personal ways to withdraw our consent. All right, so let's go on with a little bit, Patrick Henry. I'll go a couple minutes. I'll take a quick break. I have a couple articles I want to get into to demonstrate how government is destroying our liberty, and then I'll close out so that Suzanne and Mark can have their debut show. We'll get that all queued up. I'll take off around 9:45 as usual, set everything up, and we'll be back. And then at 11, case in point. It'll be about 3 or 4 after. Hopefully 2 or 3, but by 4 after, it should be up and running. So please stay on. So anyway, that government is no more than a choice among evils, is acknowledged by the most intelligent among mankind, and has been a standing maxim for ages. So I guess in a roundabout way, he did give kudos to Thomas Paine for Common Sense, where he made that had that discussion. If it be demonstrated that the adoption of this new plan, the Constitution, is a little or a trifling evil, then, sir, I acknowledge that adoption ought to follow. So he's saying that if there's just a little evil in there, we should just go ahead and adopt it. But, sir, if this be a truth, that its adoption may entail misery on the free people of this country. Which country is he talking about? Okay, you can't answer me, I know. Okay, he's talking about Virginia, the country of Virginia. This whole notion that these United States is some monolithic country, some monolithic nation, is incorrect. Patrick Henry here is acknowledging that in his statement about, let's go ahead, I acknowledge that adoption ought to follow. But, sir, if this be a truth, that its adoption may entail misery on the free people of this country, at that point, the Constitution isn't even ratified. So how could he be talking about some monolithic United States of America? See, this whole idea, what is a state? In the classical sense, it is a nation. We call them nation states. They understood that then. They understood that the country he was defending was his country, Virginia. Today, if you question the Constitution or you question the United States of America, you're excoriated. People start screaming at you, the so-called conservatives, because they like their big government. What are they conserving? Big government. I then insist that rejection ought to follow. Gentlemen strongly urge its adoption will be a mighty benefit to us. But, sir, I am made of so incredulous materials that assertions and declarations do not satisfy me. I must be convinced, sir. I shall retain my infidelity on that subject till I see our liberties secured in a manner perfectly satisfactory to my understanding. So, what was more important to Patrick Henry than ratifying the Constitution? Liberty. And why was he opposing the Constitution? Because he saw it as destroying our liberty. All right. I'm going to jump out for just a few seconds, take a quick break, and then we'll come back. I have a couple quick little stories we'll talk about in just a couple minutes. We're not going to have a few minutes to go through them real quick. We'll talk about those real fast, and then I'll break away. This Mark and Suzanne show will be up right after that at 10 a.m. That'll be sharp, and then 11. Case in point. All right, this is the Paradigm Shift on the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty from the flames of tyranny.
Fair enough. Okay, Roger, your special subject tonight is the economies of the European community. Your time starts now. Best of luck.
Thank you.
How much does Greece owe, Roger?
$367 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Mostly to the other European economies.
Correct. How much does Ireland owe?
$865 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Other European economies, mostly.
Correct. How much does Spain and Italy owe?
$1 trillion each.
Correct. Who to?
Mainly France, Britain and Germany.
Correct. And how are Germany, France and Britain going, Roger?
Well, they're struggling a bit, aren't they?
Correct. Why?
Because they've lent all these vast amounts of money to other European economies that can't possibly pay them back.
Correct. So what are they going to do?
They're going to have to bail them out.
Correct. Where are they getting the money to do that, Roger?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
How much does Portugal owe?
Hang on a minute. What was the answer to that earlier question?
Just keep answering the questions, Roger. Where is Portugal going to get the money it owes to Germany if Germany can't get back the money that it lent to Italy?
Just a minute. What was the answer to the previous question? The question was, how can broke economies lend money to other broke economies who haven't got any money because they can't pay back the money the broke economy lent to the other broke economy and shouldn't have lent it to them in the first place because the broke economy can't pay it back?
You're wasting very valuable time, Roger. How much money does Spain owe to Italy?
$41 billion, but where are they going to get it?
Correct. What does Italy owe to Spain?
$27 billion, but they haven't got it. They're broke.
Correct. How can they pay each other if neither of them has any money?
They're going to get a bailout, aren't they?
Correct. And where's the money coming from for the bailout?
That's what I'm asking you.
Correct. Why are people selling the European currency and buying the US dollar?
Because the US economy is so much stronger than the European economy.
Correct. Why is that, Roger?
Because it's owned by China.
Correct. And very well done. And after that round, you've lost $1 million.
I've lost $1 million. I thought you said well done.
Yes, well done. You've only lost $1 million. That's an extraordinary performance, Roger.
I've only lost $1 million.
Very well done.
And that's quite good, is it?
Oh, it's excellent.
Sell everything immediately. Quickly.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. I picked that break on purpose because our next stories entail economy, entail government, how they affect economies. So this article is from May 31st, 2018. It's a month or so old, but it's still current enough that it makes it applies to us today. The government creates another housing bubble, and this is by a Paul Kupik, and an Edward Pinta. Home prices are booming. So far, 2018 has posted the strongest growth since 2005. About 60% of all U.S. metros saw an acceleration in the rate of price increases through February this year, according to Housing Wire. Since mid-2012, real home prices have increased 28%, according to data from the American Enterprise Institute. So everyone out there is going, woohoo, that's great, perfect, that's a wonderful thing. Entry-level home prices are up about double that rate. In contrast, over the same period, household incomes has barely kept pace with inflation. The current pace of home price inflation is increasing the risk of another housing bubble. The root of the problem is declining underwriting standards. So you think back to the last housing bubble that burst. What led up to that? The reduction in underwriting standards. So here we are. We're doing it again. Government got involved, and we're doing the same thing all over again. The root of the problem is declining underwriting standards. In April, Freddie Mac announced an expansion of its 3% down payment mortgage. The better to compete with the Federal Housing Administration and Fannie Mae, such moves propel home prices upward because government agencies guarantee about 80% of all home purchase mortgages. Their underwriting standard guide the market, making lending even more dangerous. CNBC recently reported that credit scores may go up because new regulatory guidelines allow delinquent taxes to be excluded when calculating credit scores. These are only some of the measures that expand the credit box. That's quote unquote. And qualify even shakier borrowers for mortgages. So think back. We had that big housing bubble because the lending practices were relaxed. And here we go again. They're doing it again. They're relaxing the standards. So let's go to this next article. Long-term deficits will weaken the economy and invite a crisis. And this is from June 28th, just a couple days ago. And this is a James C. Capretta. The Congressional Budget Office released its annual long-term budget forecast this week, looking at federal spending and revenue trends over the coming 3 decades. The agency's projections are alarming, but not surprising. Rapidly rising spending on entitlement programs and interest on federal debt will lead to large and growing budget deficits. By 2048, federal debt will reach 152% of the gross domestic product, GDP, up from 78%. They're going to double the debt as a percentage of the gross domestic product. CBO's forecast probably understates the long-term fiscal challenge because it assumes many of the tax cuts enacted in late 2017 will expire as scheduled in current law at the end of 2025. It is far more likely that these tax cuts will be extended by Congress, pushing up federal debt even more rapidly than CBO now projects. CBO will release a separate long-term forecast assuming all the tax cuts are permanent at a later date. The last decade has been disastrous for the federal government's finances. At the end of 2007, just as the nation was sliding into the deepest recession since the 1930s, federal debt was evaluated equivalent to 35% of GDP. During the recession and its immediate aftermath, the federal government ran historically large deficits as businesses failed. Unemployment surged. Over a 4-year period, 2009 to 2012, the federal government ran a cumulative deficit of $5.1 trillion. And this is nothing because we're now at 22. We're right around 22 trillion in debt, and this is still climbing. The timing of the 2007 to 2009 recession could not have been worse from a budgetary perspective. It has been well known for years that the aging of the population and rising healthcare expenditures would push entitlement spending to unsustainable levels when the baby boom generation retired. That's really all the time I have for those articles. But here again, government is doing evil to us. 80% of the mortgages are guaranteed by the government. And what are they doing? They're making the criteria to get those loans very lax, giving the people that, just as in 2008, couldn't pay their mortgages. We're doing that again today. They're making these loan practices very lax. And as for the budget, they're projected to double the percentage against the GDP of debt. This is unsustainable, people. We cannot keep doing this. This government is doing evil to us. It's time to stop giving our consent. It's time to stop just voting for that R or that D. It's time to start looking for other answers. And the answers are closer to home. All right. I am out of time. I don't know where 47 minutes went, but it's gone. And that means I need to get set up for another show, in which I'm very much looking forward to, and I hope you guys are too. We have Mark and Suzanne on in just a few minutes. This is the Paradigm Shift, and this is Jeff Johnson. Have a good day. And this is Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.